The grand chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with tension. Delegates from dozens of alien species sat in their floating seats, their forms shimmering under the soft glow of holographic displays. The air was thick with anticipation, and every eye was fixed on the lone human standing at the center of the room. Daniel Carter, Earth's representative, stood tall, despite the weight of countless stares. His suit was simple, but clean, a stark contrast to the elaborate garments worn by many of the council members. He took a deep breath, his hands steady as he prepared to speak. The meeting had started hours ago, but it felt like days. Accusations had flown back and forth, each one more heated than the last. The Zorathians, a reptilian species known for their sharp claws and sharper tempers, had been the loudest voices against humanity. Their leader Vraxta glared down at Daniel with eyes that seemed to burn with fury. "Your kind is reckless," Vraxta hissed, his voice echoing through the chamber. "You disrupt the balance we have worked so hard to maintain." Daniel didn't flinch. He had faced tougher crowds back on Earth. "Reckless," he replied, his tone calm but firm. "Or independent. We are not here to bow to your demands. Humanity has always forged its own path, and we will continue to do so." His words sent ripples through the chamber. Some delegates nodded in approval, while others muttered angrily. The Zorathians were not the only ones frustrated with humanity. Many species saw Earth's rapid rise as a threat, a small, insignificant planet suddenly thrust into the galactic spotlight. They had refused to join the Council, ignored trade agreements, and even challenged the authority of older, more established civilizations. To them, humanity was an unpredictable wild card. Vraxta leaned forward, his claws tapping impatiently on the edge of his seat. "You refuse to cooperate, yet you expect us to tolerate your defiance. This cannot continue." His tail flicked behind him, a sign of growing agitation. "Join us willingly, or face the consequences." A murmur swept through the room. Consequences. That word carried weight. Everyone knew what it meant: an ultimatum. The Council had tolerated humanity's stubbornness for years, but patience was wearing thin. Now, they demanded compliance, and there would be no room for negotiation. Daniel's mind raced. He knew this moment would come eventually. Earth's leaders had debated how to handle the Council's pressure, but no one had expected it to escalate so quickly. Still, he couldn't let fear dictate his response. "We are not your subjects," he said, his voice steady. "Humanity values peace, but we will not surrender our freedom for it. If you force us into a corner, we will defend ourselves." The chamber erupted into chaos. Some delegates shouted in outrage, while others whispered nervously among themselves. Vraxta rose to his full height, towering over Daniel. "Then you leave us no choice," he growled. "Consider this your final warning. Comply, or face isolation and worse." As the Council adjourned, Daniel remained where he stood, his thoughts swirling. He knew the road ahead would be difficult. Humanity was outnumbered, outgunned, and surrounded by enemies who saw them as nothing more than pests. But as he looked around the chamber, he felt a spark of hope. Hope that humanity's spiritide's unyielding determination would carry them through whatever came next. Outside the Council chambers, reporters swarmed him, eager for answers. Daniel offered a faint smile, though his heart was heavy. "Earth will stand strong," he told them. "No matter what happens, we will not back down." And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving behind a galaxy divided and humanity ready to fight for its place among the stars. Back on Earth, the news of the Council's ultimatum spread like wildfire. Within hours, every screen in every home displayed the same images. Daniel Carter, standing firm against towering alien delegates, his calm defiance echoing through living rooms and offices across the globe. The world reacted with a mix of fear, anger, and disbelief. People gathered in streets and squares, debating what this meant for humanity's future. Some saw it as a challenge to unite, while others viewed it as a reckless gamble that could lead to disaster. Laura Bennett sat in her small but cluttered apartment, watching the footage over and over again. As one of Earth's most well-known journalists, she knew this story would define her career and, possibly, the fate of humanity itself. Laura had always been drawn to uncovering truths, even when they were uncomfortable. She leaned back in her chair, tapping her pen against her notebook. Something about the situation didn't sit right with her. Why now? Why had the Council decided to push so hard after years of tolerating humanity's independence? Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. It was Samantha Ruiz, an activist who had become a prominent voice in the fight for Earth's autonomy. Samantha's fiery speeches had inspired millions, and her presence alone brought a sense of urgency. "We need to act fast," Samantha said, pacing the room. "People are scared, and fear makes them vulnerable. If we don't give them something to believe in, they'll cave under pressure." Laura nodded, scribbling notes as Samantha spoke. "What do you mean by act?" she asked, though she already had an idea. "We expose them," Samantha replied, her eyes blazing with determination. "The Council isn't united. There are cracks in their armor species who don't agree with the Zorathians' aggression. If we can find those cracks and widen them, maybe we can buy ourselves some time." The conversation lingered in Laura's mind long after Samantha left. She spent the next few days digging deeper, interviewing experts, politicians, and ordinary citizens. Opinions were divided. President William Hayes called for unity, urging people to stand together in the face of external threats. But not everyone agreed. General Alan Brooks, head of Earth's military forces, warned that war might be inevitable. "They've given us an ultimatum," he said during a televised address. "If we don't comply, they'll see it as an act of defiance. And defiance, in their eyes, is a declaration of war." Laura listened intently, her fingers flying across her keyboard. She couldn't ignore the tension brewing between Earth's leaders. While Hayes pushed for diplomacy, Brooks advocated for strengthening Earth's defenses. The divide was clear, and it was growing wider by the day. Meanwhile, protests erupted worldwide. In New York, thousands marched through the streets, holding signs that read, "Freedom over fear." In Tokyo, demonstrators chanted slogans calling for unity. But not all voices were supportive. In London, a smaller group waved banners demanding compliance with the Council. "Why risk everything?" One protester shouted into a microphone. "We're outmatched. What's the point of fighting?" Laura covered these events tirelessly, broadcasting live from rallies and speaking to people on both sides of the debate. She noticed a pattern. Those who supported resistance often came from communities that valued self-reliance and innovation. They saw humanity's defiance as a reflection of its greatest strengths. On the other hand, those advocating for submission tended to prioritize safety and stability, fearing the consequences of provoking a powerful enemy. As days turned into weeks, Laura began to piece together a bigger picture. Humanity wasn't just facing an external threat, it was grappling with internal divisions. The Council's ultimatum had forced Earth to confront questions it had avoided for years. Who were they as a species? What did they truly value? And how far were they willing to go to protect it? One evening, as Laura sat editing her latest report, her phone buzzed. It was a message from an anonymous source, containing a single line: "Not everyone on Earth wants to fight." Her heart raced. Could there be traitors within their own ranks? If so, the stakes were higher than anyone realized. Ryan Mitchell sat in his dimly lit office, staring at the screen in front of him. As an intelligence officer, he was used to sifting through data, piecing together fragments of information to uncover hidden truths. But what he had just discovered made his blood run cold. Hidden deep within encrypted files were traces of secret communications between certain Earth officials and the Zorathians. The messages were vague, but unmistakable. Someone on Earth was working against their own kind. Ryan leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. He couldn't believe it. How could anyone betray humanity at a time like this? The Council's ultimatum had already divided the planet, but this was something else entirely. If word got out that humans were conspiring with the enemy, it would shatter whatever fragile unity remained. He knew he had to act quickly, but who could he trust? His mind turned to Laura Bennett. She had a reputation for being relentless when it came to uncovering the truth. More importantly, she had the platform to expose what he had found. Ryan grabbed his coat and headed to her apartment, careful to avoid drawing attention. The streets were unusually quiet, though posters advocating for resistance still lined the walls. Freedom over fear, one read. Ryan wondered how long that slogan would hold up if people learned about the betrayal brewing in their midst. When Laura opened the door, she could tell something was wrong. Ryan's face was pale, his usual calm demeanor replaced by obvious tension. "We need to talk," he said simply, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. He handed her a tablet containing the evidence he had gathered. Laura scrolled through the documents, her eyes widening as she realized the gravity of what she was reading. This can't be real," she whispered, shaking her head. "Who is behind this?" Ryan hesitated before answering. "It's Senator Charles Whitman. He's been in contact with the Zorthians for months, negotiating some kind of deal." Laura's stomach churned. Senator Whitman was a well-known figure, respected by many for his diplomatic efforts. If he was involved in treason, it would send shockwaves through the government and the public. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ryan shrugged. "Power, maybe, or fear. Either way, we can't let this stay hidden." They spent hours discussing their next steps. Laura insisted on publishing the story immediately, but Ryan urged caution. "If we move too fast, we risk tipping off Whitman and his allies. We need solid proof that ties him directly to the Zorthians before we go public." Reluctantly, Laura agreed. They decided to dig deeper, gathering more evidence while keeping their investigation secret. But as they worked, strange things began to happen. Ryan's phone calls were cut off mid-conversation. Laura noticed unfamiliar cars parked outside her building. Someone was watching them. The pressure mounted when Ryan suddenly vanished. One morning he didn't show up for their planned meeting. His office was empty, his computer wiped clean. Panic set in as Laura tried to reach him, but there was no answer. She knew then that she was alone in this fight, but also that she couldn't back down. Determined to honor Ryan's work, Laura continued investigating. She reached out to old contacts, piecing together clues that pointed to Whitman's involvement. Late one night, she uncovered a key piece of evidence, a recording of a conversation between Whitman and a Zorthian operative. The voice was unmistakable, confirming everything Ryan had warned her about. As she listened to the recording, Laura felt a mix of anger and resolve. She couldn't let this betrayal stand. Humanity was already facing enough threats from outside. It didn't need enemies within. With trembling hands, she began drafting her report, knowing it would change everything for better or worse. By the time she hit publish, dawn was breaking over the city. The article spread like wildfire, sparking outrage and disbelief. Protesters flooded the streets, demanding Whitman's arrest. For Laura, it was both a victory and a burden. She had exposed the truth, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a much larger storm. The Zorthians were losing patience. Their massive warships, sleek and menacing, began appearing near Earth's borders with increasing frequency. These weren't just patrols, they were shows of force, designed to intimidate. Admiral Patricia Monroe watched the situation unfold from the command center of Earth's fleet, her sharp eyes scanning the screens that displayed the movements of alien vessels. She clenched her jaw tightly, knowing full well what this meant. The Zorthians were testing humanity's resolve. "They're getting bolder," muttered Commander Greg Hayes, standing beside her. His voice was low but carried a note of unease. If they keep pushing like this, we'll have no choice but to engage. Patricia nodded, though her mind raced with possibilities. Engaging the Zorathians was risky. Earth's fleet was smaller and less advanced than their enemies. But backing down wasn't an option either. Every retreat would embolden them further, until they felt confident enough to strike without warning. Humanity needed to send a message. Earth would not be bullied. The tension reached its peak when a Zorathian cruiser entered the orbit of Jupiter, dangerously close to one of Earth's outer colonies. The colony, named New Haven, was home to thousands of families who had sought a fresh start far from Earth's crowded cities. Now, they found themselves caught in the crossfire of galactic politics. Panic spread as the alien ship loomed overhead, its shadow blotting out the sun. Admiral Monroe wasted no time. She ordered a squadron of Earth's best pilots to intercept the cruiser. Led by Captain Lisa Torres, a fearless officer known for her quick thinking. Your mission is simple, Patricia told Lisa before the launch. Show them we're not afraid, but don't fire unless fired upon. We can't afford to escalate this unnecessarily. Lisa saluted and climbed into her fighter, her heart pounding with adrenaline. As the squadron approached the Zorathian vessel, the air crackled with tension. The aliens responded by deploying their own fighters, sleek and fast, surrounding the human ships like predators circling prey. For several tense minutes, the two sides hovered in space, neither making the first move. But then, without warning, the Zorathians opened fire. Energy blasts streaked across the void, forcing Lisa and her team to scatter. They're attacking. Someone shouted over the comms. Stay calm, Lisa barked, her voice steady, despite the chaos. Stick to the plan. The humans fought back fiercely, their smaller ships darting between the larger Zorathian cruisers with surprising agility. Though outnumbered, they used their speed and maneuverability to outwit the enemy. Explosions lit up the darkness as ships on both sides were hit, debris floating silently in the aftermath of each strike. Back at the command center, Patricia monitored the battle closely, her hands gripping the edge of the console. Hold your ground, she whispered, though no one could hear her. The fate of New Haven and, perhaps all of humanity rested on this single skirmish. After what felt like hours, the Zorathians finally retreated, their damaged ships limping away from the battlefield. The humans cheered, but their victory came at a cost. Several pilots had been lost, their ships destroyed in the fight. Among them was Captain Lisa Torres, whose bravery had inspired her squadron to hold the line even when things looked grim. As news of the battle reached Earth, people mourned the fallen heroes while celebrating their hard-won triumph. The message was clear: humanity would not go down without a fight. But Admiral Monroe knew better than to let relief dull her focus. This skirmish was only the beginning. The Zorathians wouldn't stop not until they got what they wanted, and what they wanted was Earth's surrender. Deep beneath the surface of Earth, in tunnels carved out by ancient rivers and reinforced with steel, Ethan Cole paced back and forth. The leader of a growing underground resistance movement, Ethan was a man driven by purpose. His face bore the scars of battles fought and survived, and his eyes carried the weight of countless sacrifices. Around him, volunteers worked tirelessly repairing weapons, encrypting messages, and planning their next move. They called themselves the Dawn Brigade, a name that symbolized hope in humanity's darkest hour. Ethan had spent years building this network, recruiting ordinary people who refused to stand idly by while Earth's leaders debated and hesitated. Farmers, teachers, mechanics, they all came together under one cause: to protect humanity from both external threats and internal betrayal. When Laura Bennett's expose about Senator Whitman broke, it only fueled their resolve. We can't trust anyone above ground, Ethan told his team during a meeting. Not the politicians, not the council. If we want to survive, we have to take matters into our own hands. It was during one of these meetings that Laura appeared, slipping into the dimly lit room, unnoticed. She had tracked down the Dawn Brigade after realizing she couldn't fight alone. Her article had sparked outrage, but it also put her squarely in the crosshairs of powerful enemies. Someone had tried to break into her apartment the night before, and she knew staying in the open wasn't safe anymore. "I need your help," Laura said bluntly, addressing Ethan and his group. "Whitman isn't working alone. There are others people, high up in the government, who've been talking to the Zorothians. I don't know how deep this goes, but if we don't stop them, they'll hand Earth over without a fight." Ethan studied her for a moment, then nodded. He believed her not just because of her reputation, but because everything she said matched what he'd suspected for months. "What do you need?" he asked simply. Laura handed him a data chip containing evidence she'd gathered since Ryan's disappearance. It included encrypted communications, financial records, and even blueprints of secret facilities where deals with the Zorothians were being made. "This proves there's a conspiracy," she explained. "But we need to act fast. If Whitman realizes we're onto him, he'll destroy everything." The Dawn Brigade sprang into action, using Laura's intel. They planned a series of covert operations aimed at disrupting Zorothian supply lines and exposing traitors within Earth's ranks. Their first target was a remote outpost near Mars, rumored to be a hub for illegal trade between humans and aliens. Ethan led the mission himself, accompanied by a small team of trusted fighters. As they approached the outpost, cloaked in darkness, Ethan felt a surge of adrenaline. This was dangerous work, but it was necessary. Inside the facility, they found crates filled with advanced alien technology weapons, and shields clearly intended for use against Earth's forces. They planted explosives carefully, ensuring the destruction would send a clear message. Humanity wouldn't tolerate betrayal. When the outpost exploded in a fiery blaze visible from orbit, the impact rippled across the galaxy. News outlets scrambled to report on the incident, speculating about who was responsible. Meanwhile, the Dawn Brigade released anonymous statements claiming responsibility, vowing to continue fighting until every traitor was exposed and every enemy defeated. Back underground, Ethan and Laura reviewed the aftermath of their operation. "This is just the start," Ethan said, his voice firm. "We've shown them we're watching. Next, we hit harder." Laura nodded, though her expression was grim. She knew the road ahead would be long and perilous, but surrounded by people willing to risk everything for freedom, she felt a flicker of hope. Together, they might just stand a chance.